paradigm, number 5. I want to talk about how I followed events over the last few years. Speaking as an Australian who's been a keen observer of the Australia-China relationship, what I noticed is that Australia repeatedly and carelessly offended the Chinese, ruled against their imports and investments, and it all started in like 2016. They say that Obama came back from Guangzhou, the G20, kind of intimidated by China's rise, and anyway, Malcolm ruled against Huawei. They signed foreign influence legislation. Now, I don't know whether people are aware of this, but actually, I thought Xi Jinping had a very sympathetic attitude to Australia, a very warm attitude. And when I did some research about that, I discovered that he's actually the only foreign leader to have visited every Australian state. He's even been walkabout in the Northern Territory. I've always presumed he was generally fond of Australia because his father got the wheat trade going in 1962. Now, if you go to 2014, you can see this Xi Jinping give a speech in the Australian Parliament. Now, any other leader gave that speech, it would be regarded as a wonderful speech, but we've all wanted to forget it. But if you remember, when Xi spoke to the Parliament and came to Canberra, Tony Abbott and him signed a strategic partnership, an economic and strategic partnership, which compelled both parties to consult one another in a crisis. Well, but then Trump got elected, and then it was all anti-China, and then we had a global pandemic, and next minute our ABC correspondent is giving us stories about people being welded into their apartment, and that the CCP is losing its grip on power, just as China's about to make one of the most monumental decisions in its history and lock down Wuhan. So, no sympathy at all, like hostile from the get-go. Now, that's the decision to save China. Yet we're still on a, we were still, well, we had a global pandemic, and the ABC gave us stories about people being welded up in China, and the front bench of the government was on board with Chinese bioweapon accusations, and no one hosed that down. We prefer this hysterical bullshit to reality because, well, that's right. It came at great cost, actually. Now, when it comes to, I've been observing foreign policy for well nigh 50 years, and I tell you, spooks, the US Defense Department and ASPI are running our foreign policy. And the US State Department outsources the propaganda effort to ASPI. We just stood by and were complicit in Secretary of State Pompeo's xenophobic rants and Donald Trump's China virus taunts. And as you see how these events have unfolded over the last few years, it's plain to see that we're so supine in this relationship that we allow ourselves to provoke a confrontation with China on behalf of the Americans, so as to manipulate domestic opinion back in the US by a one-sided account of the inevitable backlash. And we have like this enormous industry of think tanks and like a major bill by the US to propagandize against China, when we've been propagandizing against China since the get-go. And that's our whole problem. Anyway, the problem of pandering to the paranoid style of politics, the problem of allowing defence and intelligence agencies to set the news agenda, is that eventually it leaves us all infantilized and misinformed. Anyway, now, the reason why all this has got a bearing on reality is because it's the dictates of our senior alliance partner that a peer competitor cannot be allowed to emerge. And so intention's got nothing to do with it. Now, do we want to be part of a limited war in the South China Sea to prevent China becoming a peer competitor of the United States? Because that's what Rand is talking about. That's what all the papers are about. That's what the Marines are being retrained for. That's why this incredible avalanche of propaganda, such as I've never seen in my life, as a foreign policy observer and an information professional and a person who might be considered to have a very good opinion, well-founded opinion on any subject, who's always right. Pardon. Well, anyway, you get the idea. I'm disgusted because what's the point of being worried about the lies of the Chinese Communist Party when we're drowning in our own lies? Right? Thank you. This is Carrie McKern for Pantomime Paradigm. Thank you for listening.